Hello, welcome to Coffee, Buses and Politics. Um, it's just Martin and I this evening. How you doing, Martin?
I'm very
Whoop.
well indeed. Very well. Yeah, I've just come back from well, no, I've been back a little while, but watching my good lady run the Great Eastern Run today.
How did you do?
I didn't. She did. Oh, she did absolutely fine. She breezed through it as she always does. She's really good. I saw Paul Bristow running it as well, so good to see him dressed with a pair of fairy wings. But yeah, and it's actually
No, it's not.
a good event, and it's nice to see Paul support it. To be fair, but also I think there was interviews with the mayor and the leader of the city council, and it's a really really good event. It's I mean, I've done quite a lot of half marathons around the place, and the support at Peterborough is really really good around the course. It's always great, and that's a great statement to make about Peterborough. You always get with all of these events, even the Great North Run, you get social media comments on all the local pages and everything going, "Oh, I can't get out the drive," but for the most, it's really well supported. Peterborough residents, really get behind it. The start and the finish are fantastic there, and it was lovely today, really good.
Good. Oh, great. Oh no, that sounds really good, and it is nice to see all the sort of local worthies getting involved as well. So yeah, that was really nice, really nice. And
just
good. And thing is, I know Peterborough's had challenges and gets a bit of a bad rap. The centre of Peterborough is actually really nice. But it's like the I can remember, is it called the Guildhall or whatever, the building on stilts?
Yes, the Guildhall. Yeah, it's I mean, it's obviously got accommodation at the top of it, which I don't think it's used anymore, and it's got a bit of stick because the centre of it has been closed off, and I didn't actually check today, and I was in the city centre whether it's been taken down yet. But it's great. My understanding is it's the same as Whittlesey's Buttercross, that the middle of it is there. Because it's where people used to sell butter and goods that used to melt, stuff like that with the markets. Somebody can correct me if that's wrong, but that's certainly what the Buttercross in Whittlesey is about. And I would have thought that's what the Guildhall is for as well.
So Huntingdon Town Hall, like hundreds of years ago, was slightly expanded because it used to have like a portico around the edge where people could trade from. Similar idea, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
Inside Huntingdon Town Hall, I think is lovely. By the way, I really really like it, and the boards with the past mayors are absolutely fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. No, they are. Before long, we're going to have to work out what we're going to do because we're going to fill them up. But yeah. Anyway. We were going to talk about bins.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. This I've noticed just recently. Well, I noticed a few weeks ago. I was checking up on a few things. I'm standing for election at the moment, and I was looking at some of the decisions that Fenland have made and haven't made, and one of them was to support the government simpler recycling scheme, which to a certain extent they've got no choice. It's a government scheme, you will do it, everything else. And I'm not really a favour of that sort of diktat. I'd rather the government said, here's your money, get on with it, and let people devise their own schemes. And the social media comment around it, I think, justifies that. But what was interesting, Fenland District Council made their decision to support safer recycling back in March. And as part of that decision, they agreed to publicise. And obviously, beginning of the election campaign that I started on, they'd done, as is fairly typical for Fenland, to be fair, they'd done absolutely nothing to publicise the scheme at all. So I put in a bit of a dig about it because, my view is if you're making a decision way back in March that in a year's time you're going to increase the number of bins that people are going to have, which is what is going to happen, then you need to tell them as soon as you can so people can plan in the right way when they can. And surprise, surprise, I put this leaflet out, and one of the things I mentioned on there was, you're moving to 4 bins. Fenland haven't told you. They should have communicated. And surprise, surprise, last week, all of us, this stuff starts coming out in the media talking about the scheme. And what I've seen is an article in the Wisbech Standard, and I've seen a couple of posts from Steve Tierney on Facebook. And Steve's entitled to do that. That's fine. My problem is they were done in quite a negative way. Almost, we've got to support the scheme, first of all, which is true. But the minutes of their meeting, where they agreed it, don't reflect that for a start. But also, it's almost like you don't have to take part if you don't want to. But what they don't really do is emphasize the benefits of you actually taking part in terms of increasing recycling. From a Fenland perspective, stopping stuff going to landfill, or even worse, given what Wisbech has had to go through recently, stuff having to go and be incinerated. Given that the fact that landfill is filling up is one of the reasons that there's a demand for an incinerator. And I found it really bizarre. And from what I can see, and I can't say this for definite, it's not Fenland District Council doing something organised or whatever. It seems to be a councillor going, "Oh, we've been criticised here. Let's rush out and do something." And it's done quite poorly. And what's interesting is Hunts. Today I've noticed Hunts have started to advertise their scheme on Facebook.
Oh, they've been advertising it for a little while.
Okay, it may be that because I've said a few things on Facebook about it, and I follow Hunts, these how these things work. They've suddenly appeared on it, but it's officially on Hunt's page, and it's done in a better way. And I always talk about the fact that Fenland's not a great council. This is a perfect example of it, to be honest. And so, I'm quite chuffed about it because I've said with this by-election that I'm standing as an independent in. One of the things I've said is that I believe I can make an impact, and we need a councillor who can make an impact now, because Fenland desperately needs somebody that can make a bit of a difference. And this shows me having an impact. Telling Fenland they haven't communicated, and all of a sudden they're out communicated. I'm sure they'll claim it's nothing to do with me, blah blah blah. Absolutely, but I'm also sure I won't believe it.
So, congrats. It's good. This is so. The Anthony Carpin on Facebook with unbuilt. The Anthony Carpin, the sort of what could have been. Is all in his head for designs for Guildhalls. On the bins, so I actually think that this is one where I'm going to do my usual thing, which is that we should have regional government. But I actually think having national standards for that sort of thing does make sense. I think it's particularly useful for out-of-home recycling. So if there were more standards, particularly around plastics and so on, what could be recycled where, so that you could
regional makes a lot of sense. And one of the benefits of unitaries is actually and the local government reorganisation is obviously this stupid idea where you have one council collecting waste and another council disposing of waste. In fact, I've just published a blog post about possible benefits of local government reorganisation versus disbenefits, because there are both. And I haven't put that in there, but it does absolutely make sense.
Yeah, it does. I think one of the things is, so what was it? I think one of the issues, and this is one of the things, people see government through. Oh, sorry, I was recording my weekly video. It's finished rendering and it's automatically started playing. But you'll have to look at my Facebook later if you want to see that. The people see government at the local level a lot of the time. So people are having, I've seen on social media, people having a go at the punish a district council or district council laws about this, saying, "Oh, why have you done this bloody stupid thing?" It's like, no, it's. I think there is also something here that national government should have been saying something that actually no, we're and going out and saying we're making these changes. This is why we're making these changes.
Yeah, I agree. And talking, it's okay saying it's voluntary, and I get that. I sort of get that. And it's a weird one for me because most of my kitchen waste, not all of it, because obviously cooked waste you can't do this with, but it goes into composting. And I've already got a caddy for composting in the kitchen. So now I'm going to need another caddy for all the other food waste. And, I've got to find the space for another bigger caddy outside. And I can find the space. I've got it. Other people won't. And it's those sort of things for me. The other thing about Fenland, though, we are the only council whose green bin is not its green bin.
What is your green bin?
Our brown bin is our green bin. No, sorry. Our blue bin is our green bin. Okay. And our green bin is our landfill bin.
Okay. That's different.
Yeah, it's different, but it's Fenland.
Yeah.
I've seen other councils that are the same, except what they've done is swap the lids over on the bins. So the green bin, the bin with the green lid is where you put your green waste.
Yeah.
And obviously Fenland haven't done that because they're Fenland.
I've actually put reflective tape on our bins, like 1 stripe, 2 stripe, and 3 stripes, because I can't see what they are in the dark because the colours are too similar.
This is why we need Stephen, because he can then talk about his bin lights thing that he did.
Yeah, his indicator.
Indicator. That's
this is going to be more of an issue with people for smaller houses and flats. That's going to be an issue. That is going to affect people. So there, this is the difficult thing. Is like you're sort of retrofitting lots of housing at once.
We've done that. We did that when we moved into the recycling schemes as well. We've done that as we've introduced, where they have third bin schemes as well. So we've always managed to do it, but I just don't think at the moment it's being communicated. The thing Anthony's put on there is obviously, I think we've talked about this before, but this principle. Which I think is right, which is that a local government is basically a delivery arm for national government. It is on so many things, and that's what needs to change. It's only going to change if local government has increased fundraising powers, and that means taking and reducing taxing at a national level effectively, so that there's a balance. But I absolutely agree with him, and the bin thing is a good example of it. To a certain extent, so is local government reorganisation. But it's also true that without some national poke and national funding, the changes to bin schemes to increase recycling won't happen. And similarly, the local government reorganisation would stick with the same inefficient system for another generation.
Yeah. I wanted to pick up, if I may, as well on Andrew's point. Huntingdonshire Blue Bin Recycling goes to Northern Ireland for processing. I don't know. I haven't seen that. There is it's not so. Although it's collected by Huntingdonshire, it's processed by Cambridgeshire, and there is a large recycling centre. I think you can do trips of it, where they separate out all of the waste. So I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. We do also have here a friend of mine, Dan Mayhew. You need separate bins as it reduces contamination and increases rates. So, and this is sort of my understanding of it. It's finding that balance between.
he's right about that. But it's also true that there are countries across Europe that have got 7 bins, and they've also got far greater recycling rates than we have. So you're absolutely, but they're smaller bins, to be fair. But it is, and the point about increasing recycling rates is absolutely everything, because we can't keep just sticking things in holes in the ground. It's just not sustainable. Even from a the fact that I think landfill is the greatest is the greatest emitter of methane, as an example, and you can do some things to try and capture methane. But it's very, very imperfect and not a great science.
I wanted to pick up as well on Anthony's thing. I think I broadly agree with the point, but I think this is where you see the problem, is that it's something that should have been done by, that's something that local government should have been empowered to do. Because the other thing is, it's going to massively depend where you are. If you're in, I don't know, the middle of Manchester, where everybody lives in a flat, you're probably going to be looking at a very different solution to if you're in, I don't know, rural Cornwall. And so I think having that's something where actually designing from the center is, it should be something like you will need to think about how you're going to handle this. But
I remember staying in a very glamorous place in Portugal a couple of years back. Actually, it was quite glamorous. It was lovely, and I like Portugal. But me and Angela sat on the balcony on this flat, watching the bin lorry going out and doing the recycling and collecting. And basically, they've all got communal, basically these small communal skip bins. There's no people got individual bins or anything like that. All designed in a system that works really, perfectly well. Effectively, I think it was only 2 bins, but 2 different types of bins. But you're right, it is. It's horses for courses, isn't it? And that point about being able to define your own schemes is everything, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this and things like, I remember when Alice and I lived in London, the flat we were in just had a chute for getting rid of rubbish. So what would now go in a black bin there, but we tried as much as we could recycle, but that meant taking stuff to where there was a selection of recycling things to do, and we could do it as we walked to the supermarket, and it was fine. It was if you had a lot, it was a bit of a walk, but anyway. Just to pick up
sorry, my son out in Dubai was very similar. They just had a chute somewhere that you stuck all your rubbish down. There was no real recycling of any sort. It wouldn't surprise me, because they've obviously got some cheap Asian labour out in Dubai. It wouldn't surprise me if they were actually doing all the sorting downstream. Which I don't think is practical for us. They do a lot of it, and you're right about the recycling centre up near Waterbeach. It's a fantastic facility, and any organisation that wants to go and see it, they will let you go and see it. I did some work with them a few years back, funnily enough, on the incinerator scheme that got refused, even though it was in Cambridgeshire's local plan.
Okay, so we've got part of the answer, I think, to Andrew's question from Dan. It is sent to Northern Ireland, because the local recycling Waterbeach didn't meet new regs. So there's the answer, but could come back. And evidently problems in the recycling industry. And I think it is worth saying here. I know Dan, and I can confirm that he knows his onions on this. So if it's but the cost of energy, as with so many things, cost of energy is a problem.
Yeah, this one from Andrew, I can help with to a certain extent. So the things like your potato peelings and stuff like that go into basically into a brown bin, they all get processed into compost at the facility in Waterbeach. It's fantastic to see. It's very fast turnaround stuff, and they've basically got. I'm trying to find the right word without saying the S word, the shit word. They've basically got piles of compost all over the place that they've got these forklifts that are just turning them all the time, and they're absolutely roasting, really hot and composting properly. And you'll see if you go to, I think every district has got at least one. They've got these places where you can actually go and collect it's compost-like material. It used to be called. It might have a different term now, but you can actually go and collect it and put it on your garden or wherever. It's there, collect it free of charge. There are also places, I think some of the recycling centres sell it as well. But they're all places you can go and collect it. So I very often for my garden, I go down to the, I've forgotten what it's called now. There's it's a waste exchange place anyway in March, the name of which I forget, but it's there. And as you go in, it's all you can see all the piles of compost on the left hand side. And I just take a load of trugs in the back of my car, fill the trugs up with it, and bring it back to my garden. And there are people that use it for farms and all sorts of things.
Oh, really good.
But obviously the things you can't do that with are with cooked food waste. Which is very different because it attracts rats and does all sorts of other things. And whether that gets separate treatment, I think at the moment it just goes into landfill.
These are all, yeah. Well, I have to say, I didn't know that was an option that you can go and get that. I have to look into that. So can you basically use it? Can you use it basically as mulch?
Yeah, that's what I do. I put it. I mulch. All of my veg beds. I've got a load of raised beds that I grow veg on. I mulch all of them, obviously apart from the one for the carrots, because carrots don't like compost. And then all my flower beds as well. I put it, about an inch and a half thick. It's a bit of a palaver to collect enough, but if you've got a big van or a pickup.
Sorry, this is going well off topic. We use straw for mulch. And that we found that works quite well, and it helps keep the water in as well.
Welcome to gardener's question time.
Yeah, well, yeah. Coffee buses and gardening tips. What else were we going to cover?
You wanted to talk a little bit. Yeah.
So this isn't an interim. So Greater Anglia has now been renationalized, so it's been taken back into public control. It's mostly been renationalized. The rolling stock is still owned by the Roscoe's rolling stock companies, but and next May, I think it is, the Great Northern franchise will come in house. Now I sort of wonder, is partly it's interesting and so on. But I think it highlights, I think, some of the sort of problems we've got. What's good about I think about the nationalisation isn't actually the ownership. It's that you're going to have a single controlling mind for the railway. And the people running the trains are going to be the same people responsible for the tracks and responsible for the stations and so on. But there's quite a lot of work that the railways are expensive. We still haven't figured out the basic problem is COVID happened. People are traveling on the railways, like railway passenger numbers are going up, but people aren't traveling at peak time like they used to, which is where they used to get charged lots of money. And now, flexible working is a thing, and particularly for people commuting into London, that has changed things. And it's so what concerns me is this isn't going to be a magic bullet, because there's investment that's needed on the railways. You've got the ongoing HS2 debacle, but it's going to take quite a long time for benefits to be felt.
Yeah, it is. There's two. I'm in two minds about it. The first thing is, I think we're living in an age where, and I'm old enough to remember, although I've spent a lot of this time in Germany, to be fair, not all of it, but what National Rail, what British Rail used to be like, and it wasn't a good thing. It obviously functioned, but it had huge issues for all sorts of reasons, bureaucracy and everything else. And I think people are very, very quick to forget that, and that's my worry. Is because if government has forgotten it, it means they won't be able to focus on making sure that we don't end up with a repeat of what we had, in the 70s, because there was a reason why rail was franchised. And much as a lot of people didn't like it, there was a reason for it. It wasn't just done on a whim, because it was a bit of a basket case, like a lot of public services were. So, and that's my concern.
So I take that, and you're a little bit older than I am, so I think you're slightly better. You have a slightly longer memory of it. The thing is, the railways were improving before privatization, and the problem with the big problem I think with franchising was the way it was done. That you had, sorry, I don't disagree with that at all, actually. And one of the things for me is it's about lessons learned. One of the benefits we can bring the rail network back into public ownership without the financial pain that we would have with nationalising any other previously privatised, the current privatised industries. And that is probably, one of its benefits. And if we do start to struggle, we've got the potential to franchise out again under a different model. Yeah. I mean, and I think the other thing, of course, there are open access operators. This is companies like Grand Central and Lumo who don't have a franchise but still can run on the tracks. Fortunately, the government is letting them keep going because they're quite interesting, I think, at seeing where there's a gap and providing a service. I think the thing is, because there were problems with franchising, separation of track and train. The areas were too small and they didn't last long enough. So you see that with the merging of different franchises over time. So you have those various problems, but then because of all, like rail track and all the different problems with that, and then COVID and people sort of basically handing back franchises and going to a pay to operate model, which I'll come back to that in a minute. You've actually ended up in a situation where the railways are being micromanaged from the Department for Transport, and bizarrely nationalising them and having Great British Railways as a standalone body might actually reduce government interference in the railways because so if you've got a situation where you've got somebody who is Sir Topham Hatt, the fat controller, and is actually like run a railway, that could actually really improve.
Yeah, well, because that's that's one of the things about how the rail operators work in a lot of overseas countries. To be fair, there's still, I think the rails the rails and everything else are still nationally run, and then it's the networks, the trains themselves, so are all nationally owned, and the trains themselves are what are contracted out. But some of them are contracted out to government-owned companies, which I think is the model that DB use in Germany.
So I'm going to bring up a couple of things here. What would British Rail have been like if it had the same levels of subsidies that private firms had? Right, I'm going to do something very naughty and partisan here. If you're in Huntingdon, you quite often will have delays on the line because of problems further north. Because when the East Coast Main Line was electrified, the government of the day insisted that British Rail did it from within budget, and so it had to be done quite cheaply. So in other words, when you're coming back, you know, and your train is delayed on the East Coast Main Line, you can legitimately say, I blame Margaret Thatcher. but I wanted to pick up Dan's thing here about co-ops as well. There was a proposal for a co-op rail for where I'm from originally, down in Somerset. I actually agree, and I think this is something else to say. Is actually there were some franchises that were actually good and did a decent job. I think one of the things I found really interesting with, or one of the things I particularly liked about Greater Anglia was their rolling stock. They got these new trains. Sorry, this is going to put everybody off. They're called flirt trains. They're made by Stadler. The details don't matter. Firstly, I think the spec inside was comfortable because they're designed slightly differently, or quite differently actually. They have level access, but it's a whole family of trains that you can do interesting things with. So you can run them as diesels or electric or battery. So there's you know, and I do quite like those trains.
I know exactly the trains you're on about, and I agree. And there is a point though about I think this is about public transport in general, and where I am with buses as well. You know, as a One Nationist, we have to have, even if the state has to subsidise it, we have to have a public transport network that works. And there's all sorts of reasons for it. Economically, it's great news as far as I'm concerned, and it's a subsidy worth making. So you know, as an example, as an employer, you want when you're trying to recruit new people, you want to be able to, you want the biggest pool of candidates that you can get, and the better that your public transport network operates, the bigger the pool of candidates there are, you know, that you can choose. That economically is great news because it gives employers the ability to employ the best possible person for a role that he's filling. And to take on Andrew's point about costs and everything else, this is one of the issues. It's not just about making sure trains can run, it's making sure trains can run at a price that is affordable. I'm very lucky because as an ex-serviceman, I get a vet's card, something that the Conservatives introduced that obviously I was a big fan of, but to be fair. But even then, sometimes, you know, you're buying rail tickets at cost to travel into at peak time to travel into London. It's phenomenal sometimes.
Sorry, this is something that would be good to look at as well as ticket pricing, because going into London peak time from Huntingdon is like almost 60 quid, I think. I used to go to York a lot, and it would be cheap I could buy in advance, and it would be cheaper to go first class than standard. Sorry, Dan's made a really, really good, really important point here. A lot of the issue with Thameslink is the compromise made down south. Yeah, and this is the thing. I think you can start. I think you're absolutely right, Dan, and I think you can start to, you know, mitigate them in a different way. But yes, there are. This is the thing. One of the things that concerns me is that you say, "Oh, you've nationalised the railways. Why aren't the railways working?" And it's because the railways are big, expensive, and complicated. Is basically the reason. And they're not. It's not going to get magically better overnight. And I think this is actually a broader point across sort of the public sector generally. These are not problems that you fix quickly.
100%. One of my frustrations with politics is the expectation that everything is instant and everything should be delivered instant, and it's caused by the way political parties in opposition challenge government. a lot of the time. And there's a reality that you know, public services, especially the way we are at the moment, where everything is overcomplicated, turning around public services is a really, really slow job. And I would say that also about an economy. You know, it takes something like 3 to 5 years to truly turn around an economy that's struggling. And yet literally within sort of 30, 60 days, people were on Rachel Reeves's back, you know, about the state of the economy. And it's that sort of stuff I find really frustrating about politics.
Yeah.
But I wish politicians would talk more about it, because they could then also talk about how might we speed up the pace of delivery of anything we do. HS2 is a great example of that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Actually, the Dartford crossing has now been sort of taken off national highways, and is being basically run by Department of Transport to get the damn thing actually built. There is an interesting one that actually the way parties in opposition behave in an effort to get into power makes things harder for them once they're in power.
Yeah, it's also true, but you know, the Conservative Party is struggling from this, by the way, because part of the reason for the rise of Reform is Reform are basically a populist party that will say and do anything to get in government, and that includes making all these sort of comments about everything can be done quickly. You know, I think Nigel Farage said something about it would take 2 weeks to stop the boats or something like that. What he meant was 2 weeks from the point at which legislation was agreed, which would take a year to 2 years. But what they're doing is building on the way the Conservatives have behaved in opposition, and arguably before the election, the way the Labour Party behaved in opposition. And all they're doing is just taking the way politics has got worse and actually just built on it and built a reputation on it. And if politicians really could talk genuinely about pace of delivery, about all those things, A, we might start to address some problems. B, we might be able to shoot the Reform fox.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with Anthony about that comment as well, by the way. Have I just hit it? Sorry. Yeah, I agree. There's also, if you look around, there's a few websites. I was looking at one yesterday. I think there's 20 odd councillors so far already that have had to resign because they didn't understand exactly how much work there was in being a councillor. Reform councillors, there's all sorts going on within Reform. And one of the things we do have to talk about and be careful with is, you know, there's a Reform councillor actually in court for accused of misinformation over about another councillor during this is in Cambridgeshire, by the way, Cambridgeshire County Councillor, for misinformation about another councillor during an election campaign. If that proves to be true, I think what he said was absolutely shocking, and I think he's denying it. But you know, let's see how it pans out. You know, I do think eventually Reform will start to slide, and I think Labour Party are the ones that will benefit from it, because I can't see why anybody would support the Conservatives at the moment.
The other one is I think they're finding out hopefully they're finding, like with the Doge for Kent County Council, they're finding out that actually there are structural problems with how local government is funded. And I'm sorry if I sound like I hope I don't sound like I'm making excuses or whatever. Local government is complicated and it's difficult, and it's not a case of you saw this with Doge in America, that making those huge cuts causes a huge amount of problems. But then, you know, and the Doge they try to do in Kent, it's just like, no, this is not reality.
It's not just the Doge thing, and absolutely right. I think the Doge thing that Reform set up, I think is slowly being wound down because it's not having an impact. Yeah. I think in Leicestershire, they have agreed to bring in at great cost some independent auditors to try and make savings, which actually says our Dode system is not good enough.
And we don't have any ideas ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And my real fear about that, the leader of Leicestershire said it has the potential to pay for itself many times over. You know, and if it's successful, that's absolutely right. But you know, there's a reality. You've not got any ideas. Your Doge thing isn't paying off. So what do you think they are going to find from a system and a structure that has effectively been cut and cut and cut since 2010?
Yeah.
And I suspect they're throwing good money after bad is the reality.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's to an extent we know what a lot of the problems are in local government. And yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to head on because I'm going to go and eat some dinner, and not another one. We usually do favourite buses. So because I've been on holiday, my favourite bus is bus number 1, which is the bus in Reykjavik that went from the place we were staying to the bus station in Reykjavik in Iceland. Yes. So
my favourite bus is not one I've been on recently, but it's a new bus that is running from March through to Whittlesea and Peterborough. I think it's going, which is one of these smaller buses actually, and nice to see. Nice small modern bus, looks really great. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Service works well.
It's worth mentioning as well, just on buses, there's a new thing from the Combined Authority, which is the CPCA Connect ticket, £5 for a day, £2 with a Tiger Pass, and it's valid on the 31, 32, X32, and 33, so you can travel seamlessly across the services without paying twice.
Yeah, the reason for that, I think, is because they ended the service. I'm not quite clear on this, but they ended the service from March to Whittlesea. Stagecoach did, and it got franchised out to another company. But what it meant was people travelling on that through route into Peterborough were having to pay twice. Yeah. So I think that's why they've done it, and good on them actually. It's it's doing. I'm sure Paul is going to hate me saying this, but I'm going to say it. He's doing exactly what Nick was doing, which is dealing with problems as they arise with the bus network. The next step is to get franchising right, so we haven't got to struggle with this stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Right, I'm going to toddle on. We're going to be going back to Friday mornings, so next we'll be up at some ungodly hour of the morning on a Friday to do coffee, buses, and politics.
Yeah, I think we said we were going to 4:30 on a Friday morning. Is that right?
Yeah, just I think we're going to do it when we get back from our 10-mile run.
Okay, yeah.
You're in the army. You probably did that kind of thing.
Oh yes. I remember once. Sorry, this is really sad. I remember once. This is when I was an apprentice at the Army Apprentice College at Chepstow, if you must know. And we had our Christmas do one night, and I was 17 when this happened, but we were allowed to drink beer on the station at Chepstow at 17, but we weren't allowed to drink shorts. But I did, and I was knocking back shots of whiskey and all sorts. And what the meanies did, they knew we were all going to get absolutely hammered at the Christmas do, and so what they did is then at 4 o'clock the next morning they got us all up and made us run.
And you stumbled into bed 2 hours earlier.
Yeah, it's about right. Yeah, it happened a couple of other times, but that's the one I remember.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, everyone. See you soon.
Cheers all.
Bye.